Hey everyone, and welcome back. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're diving into the 8th explainer in our research methodology series, titled The Concept of Tantra Yukti. Now, over the next 10 minutes or so, we are going to completely flip how you look at the structure of scientific writing. Seriously, get ready, because we're exploring a system that is incredibly ancient, yet somehow shockingly modern. And honestly, it might just completely transform how you structure your own work from here on out. Let's get started.
So, you know that feeling when you're staring at a really dense, highly technical, and frankly, completely confusing modern scientific paper? We all know the standard structure, right? The introduction, methods, results, and discussion, what we often call the I am already format. It feels like this rigid product of the Industrial Revolution, designed for maximum efficiency in sterile labs and modern universities. It feels, well, very modern. But here's a question that might genuinely surprise you. Who actually invented the modern research paper? What if I told you that the ultimate blueprint for structuring complex research wasn't created in some 20th century European laboratory at all? What if it was actually perfected over 2,000 years ago in ancient India? No way, right? Well, let's look into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. The system we are talking about today is called Tantra Yukti. Now, let's demystify that Sanskrit right out of the gate. Tantra in this classical context basically means a systematic treatise, or a canonical framework for knowledge. You can just think of it as the textbook or the theory itself. Yukti, on the other hand, translates to a method, a device, or an artful arrangement. So when you put them together, Tantra Yukti refers to the specific methodological devices used by an author to actually compose a systematic text. And, crucially, it's the exact same set of tools a reader uses to decode it. It is literally a bridge from the author's toolkit for composing straight to the reader's toolkit for interpreting that knowledge.
To guide us today, we're actually going to use one of these ancient devices right now. It's called an Uddesha, which is simply a concise outline or agenda. First, we'll look at the ancient science blueprint. Second, arranging sentences and meanings. Third, core devices in practice. Fourth, mapping ancient to modern. And finally, why it still matters. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the Ancient Science Blueprint. We're moving way past any mystical assumptions here and stepping straight into highly practical, rigid metamethods. While Tantra Yukti has its deepest roots in classical Ayurveda, you'll find it in the foundational medical texts of Karaka, Sushruta, and Vagbhata. It is absolutely not just a medical toolkit, it's a universal scaffold. We actually see these exact same organizing principles utilized in ancient statecraft, like Kautilya's Arthashastra. I mean, think about that for a second. The exact same structural rules used to carefully diagnose and cure physical diseases were also being used to administer justice, manage economies, and build massive empires. We even find these rules in ancient texts on poetics. It functions as a pan-shastric meta-method. That's just a fancy way of saying it's a set of universal design patterns for building, communicating, and testing theories across absolutely any discipline.
Real quick, I want to clear up a very common historical confusion before we go further. Ancient India was super famous for its rich culture of live, public debates. Those debates were governed by strict rules called Vada Marga. But Tantra Yukti is entirely distinct from that. While Vada Marga outlines the protocols for winning a live, back-and-forth argument against an opponent, Tantra Yukti is specifically designed for textual exposition. It's for composing and decoding written systematic knowledge, where the author is speaking directly to the reader, laying out facts logically, rather than trying to win a live sparring match.
Moving right along to Section 2, arranging sentences and meanings. Let's peel back the layers and see how these ancient scholars actually edited their texts.
Classical commentators like Dalhana saw Tantra Yukti as serving two main operations. First, we have Vakya Yojana, which is structural editing. This is all about the syntax, binding together disorderly sentences, connecting dispersed material, and making sure the physical words flow in a logical way. Then you have Artha Yojana, or semantic editing, and this is where the real magic happens. This is arranging the deeper meanings, extending the scope of an idea, and making latent, hidden concepts explicitly clear to the reader. Think of it like this. Vakya Yojana is fixing the grammar of a messy, poorly punctuated sentence, while Artha Yojana is making sure the underlying philosophy actually makes sense and holds up to scrutiny.
Okay, Section 3, Core Devices in Practice. Let's look at the specific tools in this toolkit.
I want you to picture this beautiful visual metaphor inspired by the ancient authors Karaka and Sushruta. They said that these methodological devices are like sunlight revealing water under lotus leaves. You see, ancient texts were often written in very terse, compressed lines just to make them easier to memorize. But by applying this microgrammar of exposition, a single incredibly dense line could blossom and expand into a fully intelligible, deeply detailed clinical protocol. It's a very poetic way to describe a highly technical process, but it just beautifully captures how clarity dawns on the reader.
Let's rapidly fire through 5 standout devices from the system so you can see their immense modern utility. First up is authoritative. This is subject anchoring, basically your problem statement. It's the governing theme that sets the rigorous boundaries of your entire paper so you don't drift off topic. Second, yoga and uddesha. This represents your proper arrangement and your outline. It's the roadmap that tells the reader exactly where you're going before you take them on the journey. Third is arthapathy, which is the presumption. This is where the author supplies unstated necessary links so the logic holds up. Like if I say, John doesn't eat during the day, yet he's gaining weight, the arthapathy, the logical presumption, is that John must be eating at night. It cleanly fills in the gaps. Fourth is authoritative, the extension. This is how you logically apply rules from a known, proven case to parallel unknown cases, which is absolutely crucial for generalizing scientific findings. And fifth is prayojana, the ultimate purpose or aim of the text itself. Without prayojana, you just have a giant pile of data without any destination.
So the crucial point here is just how foundational these tools are, especially adhikarana. I mean, think about the absolute pain of reading a modern research paper, where the core problem is never clearly defined. You're reading page after page of data, but you have no idea why. Well, adhikarana solves this. It is the governing topic that gives every single subsequent statement relevance. As the ancient commentators noted, without it, interpretation just floats aimlessly. But with it, your arguments have a precise, locked-in target. It proves exactly why this ancient rule is just so brilliant.
Which brings us to the climax of our explainer. Section 4, Mapping Ancient to Modern. Get ready, because we're about to prove this ancient system is practically identical to modern peer-reviewed structures.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how seamlessly the ancient Sanskrit maps straight onto the modern IMRAD format. Look at this continuity across millennia. The ancient prayojana is exactly what we call the introduction or rationale today. It answers the fundamental, guiding question, why are we even doing this study in the first place? Next, adhikaranana represents your core, research question, or problem statement. It's the absolute anchor keeping the paper focused on one clear goal. Then we have uddesha, that brief mention or initial outline, which is perfectly analogous to your modern abstract and keywords, giving the reader a rapid snapshot of the work to come. Moving down, nirdesha is the detailed exposition. This matches our methods and results sections perfectly, where every single variable, test, and outcome is rigorously detailed. Now look at apavarga. When ancient authors used apavarga to mark a specific exception to a general rule, they were doing exactly what we do when we write a limitations section. They were acknowledging the boundaries and flaws of their own findings. And finally, attidesha, the logical extension of similar cases, is precisely what we do in the discussion or generalizability section. You take your specific, narrow results and explain how they might reliably apply to the wider world. It's the exact same scientific dance, perfected thousands of years ago.
36. If mapping those 6 felt like a lot to take in, just take a breath. 36 is the consensus number of devices found in Karaka's classical list. While some commentators counted 32 and others expanded it to 40 or more, 36 is generally the accepted number. This means ancient scholars didn't just have some loose, casual framework. They had a massive, comprehensive toolkit of 36 specific structural devices at their disposal to ensure their writing was perfectly clear, logically sound, and highly organized.
All right, let's bring this all home in our final section, why it still matters. Why should a 21st century researcher care about all this?
Well, first, it remains an incredible map for scholarly editing and commentary. Second, it is a brilliant pedagogy for teaching modern scientific writing. Honestly, if we taught students these principles self-consciously today, research papers would be significantly less bloated, beautifully structured, and just far easier to read. Third, it cultivates interpretive ethics and intellectual humility. By consciously using tools that force you to explicitly state your exceptions and limitations, you remain deeply honest about your work. And finally, it perfectly balances 2 crucial philosophical concepts, ekanta and anekanta. Ekanta represents absolute certainty, the hard, undeniable facts. But anekanta is qualified plurality. It acknowledges that knowledge often comes in degrees, contexts, and multiple valid viewpoints. Understanding that science isn't just about rigid dogma, but also about nuanced, qualified truths, ultimately makes for far better, more adaptable science.
As one of our core source documents so brilliantly puts it regarding the resilience of this ancient framework,
That's not nostalgia, it's method. Good structural method is completely timeless. Whether you are literally carving onto a palm leaf in ancient India or typing into a modern word processor in a high-tech lab, the human need to anchor a topic, state a purpose, detail the evidence, and admit limitations, that simply doesn't change. So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. How will you apply this 2,000-year-old toolkit to structure your next writing project? Will you make sure your Adhikarana is rock solid before you even start typing? I really hope this explainer has completely transformed how you view the architecture of knowledge. If you found this dive into ancient research methodology as fascinating as I did, please leave a like on this explainer, drop a comment with your thoughts below, share it with your peers, and make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss another explainer. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.